Alright guys, welcome to our highs and lows breakdown of the pound Japanese yen. Um, let's get started. So we have been maintaining the market structure here on the weekly time frame of higher highs and higher lows. We're currently, last week we made a high at 141.60 approximately, which on the weekly and daily time frame was this very strong resistance, because if you look at the charts here, this area was resistance. We broke above this area and retested it as support along these weekly candles here. So if you bring that area across, it would act as an area of resistance on the weekly and daily time frames. So I know a lot of someone asked in the group concerning my personal confirmations for taking this sell trade, and I'll kind of explain that to you guys as we drop down to the other time frames. I guess we could glance at the monthly time frame, because I think Monday or Tuesday we start a new month. So we could see this month close reasonably bullish. So I mean, we just need to gauge and see, because if we look at this area, we still on the monthly time frame have been functioning along this kind of downtrend area, but on the smaller time frames we are in an uptrend on this pair. So that's like the weekly, the daily, and the 4 hour is very bullish, or has a bullish market structure. So I dropped down to the daily time frame, and we could see that last week's daily candle closed as a doji candle. Reason being that when we got the bullish move during the Asian session on Thursday night / Friday morning, we pushed up into an area of resistance. And ironically, I wasn't aware that the news came out, but the reason for this sell-off was because of the strength in the Japanese yen, because the Prime Minister announced that he'd be resigning due to health conditions. And how the market absorbs this information is that what the market sees is there's change happening, so better things could possibly be coming. So they take it as some optimism, and the yen strengthened, which weakened the pound against the Japanese yen. So what I would do is I'd bring on some of my chart indicators at this point. And as we can see, I mean, I know a lot of the lines may be a bit confusing, but they're just areas of support and resistance. We have been functioning really nice. We're getting some really nice market structure in the pound Japanese yen, functioning within this channel, finding support at the bottom of the channel, finding resistance at the top of the channel. Support at the bottom, resistance at the top. Support at the bottom, resistance at the top. So I came on the charts during London session. I'm just gonna explain the trade briefly that I took, because it may be, I understand why persons may be like, all right, we didn't see any what you may call them, shooting stars or any reversal signals, but I could explain to you all, and this is why I've stressed in my earlier videos why I stress on market structure so much in terms of the market structure within this entire channel. And for me, I've been marking, I expected us to push up into 41.50 by the end of the week, and we should see some bearish price action from this area. So that was my anticipation going into the charts come Friday morning. If we drop down, I think, was it the 30-minute? Yeah, the 30-minute and the 1 hour. At first I was on the 1 hour, and I saw that price pushed up and closed extremely bullish above 41.50. Now at this point I told myself, all right, this 1 hour candle created a high, right? The following 1 hour candle didn't move much, but we pushed down and closed back below 41.50. Now for us to continue bullish, we need to close above 41.50, find this area as support, and push up. But I noticed that we closed below this area. So on the close of this 1 hour candle, I told myself, all right, we could potentially see a sell-off from this zone if we don't push above the most recent resistance of 141.50. So from the time, so I dropped down to the 30-minute time frame, and on the 30-minute time frame we saw that we had this really bearish candle, a doji candle, and on the open of this 30-minute candle we pushed up a bit to 41.50, but so I noticed some price stalling where price wasn't getting enough juice to push above this area and find support. So I told myself, all right, this is a really good area to execute a sell, because here I have a clear high, and this, if I measured it, would have been from this area to where my entry would have been 13 pips. So at this point, I'm telling myself, all right, if market structure is to hold, all I need to do is risk 13 pips, because I'm taking this as my high. 13 pips in order to gain a potential, well, at the time I thought 50 pips, right? So I was risking 13 pips to potentially gain 50 pips. So when I executed my trade, where's my, all right, short position. So when I executed my trade at like 141.48. Let me just fix this. I put my stop loss above this most recent high, because I mean, as I just explained, if price were to go past this high, that means that my trade would have been invalid and we would continue in bullish, forming higher highs. So I placed my stop above the most recent high. If I drag this across, right, above the most recent high, and my potential win I was aiming for is 50 pips. So that's around right here. Basically 141 flat. I was expecting price to go to. Let me see if I could. This looks really big and obzucky. Let's bring this across. Right. So this was my potential trade. Now that's why I can't stress enough how important it is to mark market structure. So my confirmations for this trade was that, one, on the weekly and daily time frame, if I drop to the weekly quickly, this area is a very strong area of resistance. So even if we weren't going to get a really big sell-off, I expect price to get some trouble at this area of resistance, so you would get some form of sell-off, even if it's just for 30 pips, right? From this area, very strong area of resistance. Secondly, we're functioning within this channel, and we've always, for the past few weeks, been getting our resistance off the top end of this channel. And thirdly, when you zoom down into the smaller time frames, price was unable to close and remain above the resistance of 141.50. So for me, I'm reasonably confident in my trading, so I was willing. I mean, that's a really good risk to reward ratio. I'm really happy to risk 13 pips to potentially gain 50 pips. But when I saw this extremely strong bullish movement, I basically took this trade, and no lying, within, I'd say, not even 5 minutes, could be 3 minutes, price started to sell off. So, I mean, talk about good timing, right? So from the time I saw this extremely strong bearish movement, I knew that, all right, we're going to get some more sell-off. So I did not close off any, not one position of my trade, and I let it run. And I think I closed off my first position at around 141.60, and then I let the rest run and close off all at 140, around 140. So that's like 140.05, somewhere there. So I was able to risk 13 pips to potential, and I was able to capitalize on approximately 100. I'll call it 100 pips because I closed off some at this area. So again, if you add up the difference, it would approximately be 100 pips. So that was me just explaining the trade from last Friday. What do I expect for the pound coming into this week, right? To be honest, what helped me make my decision on what I expect coming in is because I know that this movement only happened because of weakness in the Japanese yen, right? I mean, not weakness, sorry, strength in the Japanese yen. So not necessarily because the pound is weak, because if I glance across to the pound USD, the pound USD barely had any sell-off at all. The pound USD maintained its bullish market structure and has been continuing to push up ever since, right, guys? So that speaks to me, and that tells me, all right, the pound is generally very strong. So we could potentially still see some bullish price action in the pound. And other things to note is that if I zoom out on the pound Japanese yen, now remember we're functioning within this channel. Once we don't break below the lower end of this channel, the market structure on this pair is still very bullish. Now, it doesn't, not to say that just like Friday, you could still capitalize on sells, but you could only capitalize on sells if you are aware of the overall market structure, and market structure being higher lows and higher highs. So if we potentially created a higher high at this point, we could sell off into creating a higher low. So what I anticipate for this pair, I'm not certain if we're going to push down all the way into the lower part of this channel. I genuinely don't think so. What I think may happen is that we may trend kind of diagonally up a bit slowly and then get a push up to retest 142. But then again, you know what I always preach, right? We take market structure as we see it. So here, if I drop down to the 1 hour time frame, I kind of, these blue boxes kind of identify to me the more immediate areas of support and resistance and ranges that I won't trade in. So for instance, this very small range here isn't a range I would trade in, because if I measure, that's like 17, 16 pips. I mean, if no, I won't. That's me personally. I would avoid a small range here, and I would wait for price to either break above this range, find some support to sell up to retest the high, or break below this range and sell it down to this next area of support. If I glance, let's see the weekly time frame one more time. Yeah, and even look, we had that strong sell-off on Friday, but look how extremely bullish this weekly candle is. Like, this is a really bullish weekly candle. We drop down to the daily. Yeah, so we're still extremely bullish on the pound. I anticipate more bullishness, but it's not to say that I won't capitalize on any hints that market structure would be telling me. So come market open, I'm not sure what would happen, but we could push up to retest the high, sell back down, find some support, and buy it back up, right, guys? So let me stay on the 1 hour time frame. So what I would be watching if I were you are these areas here, where areas of support and resistance, to try to capitalize. So if we break below this area and we retest this zone as resistance, I'd sell it down for approximately 40-50 pips, and vice versa. As for like a clear setup, I really don't see a clear setup. For me, the clear setups, given how strong this channel is, your clear setups would tend to come in once we approach the either end of the channel. Other than that, between these zones, I personally try to capitalize on sells off smaller areas of resistance and support. So like, I think one thing I should explain as well, on Asian session, so that was Thursday night, I thought that I missed out on a really easy trade, because I think we were around this area on, not an easy trade. I thought that price just ran off and left me, right? So price broke out of this zone around Asian session being Thursday night and just continued to push up without any pullbacks. Now at this point, I'm pretty sure at around this area, a lot of traders came in and bought into the market because they're thinking, all right, price is running and leaving me. But it's very important to be calm and collective and be aware of where price is in the overall structure of the market. So I knew that price was creating a high. A lot of traders came in here and got caught in buys and missed out. And I mean, got their stop loss hit because of this sell-off. But because I'm aware of the general market structure of this pair, and I know that we're pushing up into resistance, into the upper end of the channel, it would be a really nice place to take a sell. Now, I could have been wrong, but remember, given my risk to reward ratio, I'm only risking 13 pips. So I don't mind giving the market 13 pips to see if I'm correct or wrong, right, guys? So what to anticipate, I still think we're extremely bullish on this pair. So we just need to see on market open where we find support and we're able to buy it up to continue the general market structure, given that the pound is so bullish. Not to say that we could try to create a lower wick on the weekly time frame, because like if you look at the weekly candle, a really strong bullish weekly candle, we could pull back a bit to retest this zone as support and then buy it up, but I'm really not sure. So we really kind of need to look at price action and see what is happening. I have my zones marked out. If we push above this area of 140.80, we have a clean, like you see how this nice bearish candle coming down. Chances are, if we push back above this area, we get a clean bullish candle pushing up. So if we close above 140.80, I would enter buys to retest the highs at 140, 150 easily. Other than that, I explain what I'm looking for on this pair. Now moving on to EURUSD. I haven't traded this pair much last week, but very messy. What I would do is I would delete all the things on the chart, and I'd start from scratch just to get a better picture of what's happening, right? So we're on the monthly time frame. This month's candle, we saw a lot of ranging, but generally we closed bullish to end this month. We have our downtrend line here that I mentioned some weeks ago. Did I put it here or did I have it here? I believe like I think I had it there. There kind of gives me a better idea. Okay, no, it had to have been here. Yeah, so as you can see, we kind of have been breaking out slightly out of this downtrend line, and it has basically been because of some weakness in the US dollar. We saw some sell off, a little bit of a sell off in between, but I mean it hasn't been nothing much to say. So what I would do on the monthly time frame, so we observe that we're kind of breaking out of the trend line, right? So we kind of looking to see where price finds support to catch some buys up. On the weekly time frame now, what I like to do is I'll establish the weekly highs and lows. Now remember that we're going back, this is the basics, right guys? And I suggest that everybody get into the habit of doing this kind of thing. So what I would do is I'd establish the previous week's high, comes in at 1965. Then we have the previous week's low. And by previous, I don't mean last week, I mean the week before. Just because that high was higher than this week's high, I kind of just want to establish where it's at to see how price relates to that, how the current price of the week coming relates to last week's the previous week's high. So we also have a high coming in at this area, and this area is basically, I'd say 1920. Alright, 1920. Right, and the low is still, I'd leave it at around 1750. So basically, and what I would mark off as well is that we have a nice area of resistance around this area as well, and that area is 1850 approximately. 1850. Also, what I would include, because I remember that the area of 1800 was a very strong support at some point last week. So 1800, and also 1900 flat. Right. So we drop down to the daily time frame. And on the daily time frame, we see that, you know, we have been ranging. And I mean, I guess any of you that try to trade this pair, you would notice that we have been ranging for some time, right? So we've been in a range for, this looks like a few weeks, well, and we're kind of looking as though we're potentially, but still, just at a glance, I'm noticing that we've been creating higher highs and higher lows within the range. So if you look at price created a high, I mean, so that's an indication that whilst we are ranging, we are still very bullish. Price created a high here, created a low, created a higher high because it's higher than this previous high, even if it's by a few pips. Then it created a higher low because it's higher than this previous low. Then a higher high, higher low, higher than this previous low, and we're in the process of going up to create a higher high. That's the daily time frame, and we have the daily high and potentially approximately around the daily low. What I would like to do, however, is zoom out possibly into the weekly time frame to see what is the next area of strong resistance on this pair. So first we have an area of resistance around, I would say, 1.235, and well, first let me see where, because 1.2 is a key level, so let's see where that would be. That would be around here. So all right, I'd say the next area of resistance is 1.2 flat. Then if we break above that, we have a next area of resistance around 1.235 as mentioned previously. But however, if we break above 1.235, we have clean price action for buys all the way up into I'd say 1.22 flat. So that's approximately 200 pips. Let's see, 1.22 flat. All right, yeah. So if we break above, so now notice what I'm doing, right? I'm on the weekly time frame, sorry. And I'm looking left to see what kind of price action I'm seeing, what kind of area of resistance and support I'm seeing that would let me know what kind of price action to expect in the present. So if we break above these areas of resistance, so basically if you find support at any one of these areas, you could catch buys and look at price move above these areas of resistance and retest them as support. However, I think the cleanest and best trade would be if you get a break above 1.235 flat or 1.2 flat. You get a clean move up into 1.22. So this area here, if I look and buy from this area to this resistance here, is approximately 200 pips. So you could catch a nice clean movement of buys for 200 pips if price breaks above this area and pushes up. And I just put one more area of resistance or support just to see where potentially price could push up into if we get some aggressive price action. So we could push up into 1.24, right? So that's what I think that you'll need to look at. If we look for where price is creating support and you have the levels at the side here, you could pause the video and see what levels I'm looking at for areas of support and resistance, and I hope you'll understand. Conversely, if by some miracle we get some strengthening of the US dollar, we could find some resistance and sell off, right? However, I'm not interested in sells on this pair unless price breaks below 1.17 flat. So that's I guess I've been saying that for some weeks now, right? I'm not really interested personally in sells unless we break below this area here, because I know that if we break below this area, that means that we are extremely bearish, and we could see, you see this nice clean bullish move up, we would see a nice clean bearish move down. So I'm bullish on EURUSD as well. I hope you guys understood what I explained. If not, send me a DM. Let's check the pound USD. And I mean, we mentioned, well, we haven't stayed within the channel on this pair, so I guess we could delete that. Delete the channel. We could delete the downtrend line. Well, at least I would. Or should I leave it? You know what? I'd leave it. And let's look at this pair only. Well, let's take a glance at the monthly time frame. Yep, extremely well. Yeah, that's an extremely bullish monthly candle because there was no top wick. And we closed above this area to the left here, resistance. So potentially we could see some very strong bullish moves up to retest 138 flats, and that's by me glancing on the monthly time frame, right? And that's because we saw this really clean bearish monthly candle, so potentially we could see a really clean bullish monthly candle up into this level of resistance. If I drop down to the weekly time frame, yeah, so we have the weekly high, and however we don't have the weekly low established, so let's put that in there. And the weekly low is coming in at 1.3 flat, I believe. No, 1.350. 1.350. So the weekly low is at 1.350. So provided that we stay above 1.350, I'm still very bullish on this pair. And to be honest, I think I would be trading this pair next week because I see this clean move. Once we break, well, we have broken above, but once the next weekly candle kind of stays above this area, we could catch some clean buys, basically just like Euro USD up into 1.38. So let's put that zone 1.38 flat. Yeah, this area here. So although we could get a little resistance around these areas, so let me just put that in. We could get some resistance at around 1.36, I believe. Yeah, 1.36. Yeah, your resistance there. But generally speaking, we have some nice clean moves. Although you see these wicks here to the left, so we could see some pushing up and then selling down, pushing up and then selling down as we try to break this area. But generally speaking, I think that we have some nice potential, nice clean movement coming in. It may not happen this week, but it could be the following week, because remember, this is a weekly time frame, right? So this weekly candle, given that we had this strong bullish move, this current week candle could kind of range for a bit as it prepares us for the weeks to come. However, this is an extremely bullish candle. So if the bullishness continues into this week, we could potentially see us retest 136 flat. Let's look at Euro Japanese yen. A bit messy. Do I want to clean this chart? Now, just for advice sake, you should always clean your chart at the beginning of the week. But I haven't been for the past, I'd say like 3 weeks, because of the kind of price action we've been getting, where we've just been ranging. So I just kind of think it's smart to keep the same areas of support and resistance and just trade off of those. I could explain what's happening with Euro Japanese yen from this perspective. So we kind of were following this downtrend line, and I think I mentioned that I capitalized off of sells if we retested this area, and we retested and caught a sell scalp, I'd call it, into 125 flat, and then we pushed up, right? Now we pushed up. Now this is the forward time frame. We broke above and we came back down to retest. Let me move this. Big up Zucky. Blue box, right? So we pushed up above this area, found some resistance around this area, came sold back down, retested 125.20, and then continued to push back up. Now because of for me, this kind of thing is really cool, because look at price action, right? Does the market know that the president of what's his name? The president of Japan, not president, the prime minister of Japan is about to resign. Basically, at this point, which was the most recent high, the guy resigned and the market reacted instantly. So it's just kind of clever, or for me, kind of ironic, that you get these kinds of news coming out just as prices at particular areas of resistance. So yeah, so this was a kind of double top formation, and we sold off from there. One may argue that this is a clear reversal signal, and we may be selling off from there. But on the bigger time frames, for me, the bigger time frames, we are still bullish. We are still creating higher highs and higher lows. Even though this was an extremely large sell off, provided that we stay above 124.50, we could still continue to see some bullish price action with Euro Japanese yen. So we could drop down a bit lower to retest the downtrend line to the T, but it's a 50-50 shot. So just as I have my areas of support and resistance here on the chart, you just need to play the ranges. If you break above this area, find support along this area, you could catch a buy up for 50 pips into 126. So it's just a matter of playing the ranges on this pair. Avoid the smaller ranges and try to play the bigger ranges. Do I want to do any other pairs? I do not think so. I think you'll have a good enough of knowledge to digest from this week's analysis. We went through 4 pairs. We went through the pound Japanese yen, euro USD, the pound USD, and euro Japanese yen. If you all have any other pairs you all would like me to go over, just shoot a message in the chat and I'll try to, do a little supplementary video on it. Hope this week's video was helpful. See you later.